Hi, my name is Tara Kachaturoff, and I'm the host of Michigan Entrepreneur, where we feature businesses from startup to stellar. Today, I have as my special guest Cindy Clement, who is the author of Your Body's Environmental Chemical Burden. Yikes.
Good morning.
And that's a great book, and we're going to explore that over two interviews with you because we're going to unpack this brand new book that you've just published because it's a really, really important topic. But before we jump into that, Cindy, let's talk a little bit about your background and who you are. So you're in the health space, but where did it all start?
It really all started, Tara, with my childhood. My parents owned a party store, and we ate truly junk food from morning until night. Our breakfast could be a Hostess cupcake with chocolate milk. The lunch that my mom would pack, now this is back in the 1950s, the late 50s, my mother would pack our lunch a white bread grape jelly sandwich with a bag of chips and a Nesbitt's orange and a packaged fudge brownie from the Farm Crust man. And then dinner time, she would pull a slab of meat out of the cooler, and then we'd have boxed au gratin potatoes and canned vegetables. And I don't recall ever drinking any water at all. It was Kool-Aid and soda and chocolate milk is what we drank. So there were 4 children in my family, and we all had health problems, all of us. I had the most severe of the health problems. My body's a little bit different than the rest of the family. I tend to take after my dad's side of the family. So I had, about age 5, I started developing allergies. And again, back in the 50s, they didn't know an awful lot, but the pediatrician was also the allergist at that time. And they gave me a little scratch test and found out I was allergic to 5 different things, and they made a serum up, and now come in every Monday and have a shot, and we'll get rid of these allergies. Well, that was at age 5. By the time I was 16, I was allergic to 289 different things and was up to 4 allergy shots a week.
Oh my gosh.
And as I got a little bit older, age 5, after age 6, I started developing severe asthma. We didn't have the drugs back then that they have now, but they did have cortisone, a steroid. And I started to take cortisone at a very young age, and I was on it for 16 years every day. And that is what has kind of, done a little bit of damage to my organs and bones, being on a steroid for a lifetime practically in those developing years. So I had the asthma, I did the inhalers, I was hospitalized numerous times as a child for an impacted bowel. Now think back.
Is that when things are?
Yes, they never moved. It would be 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks, and I wouldn't pass a bowel movement. And St. Joe's in Pontiac was where my parents were always taking me. It almost looked as if I was an abusive child or an abused child because they kept taking me to the hospital all the time because I had so many things going on. It went into chronic kidney infections. It went into chronic eczema.
Back then, I mean,
nobody talked about nutrition.
I know they don't. Even nowadays, even the doctors today, it's stunning to me. But I was wondering, back then, was nutrition something?
No.
Not back then either.
Oh heavens, no. Well, if it was, we lived in it was a cottage town when we moved there. Union Lake, which is now a huge, I think it's been swallowed up by Commerce Township. But we lived right across the street from Union Lake, and there were cottages. It was just a tiny little town at that time. So, whether this information was available, it wasn't in the little town that I grew up in. But it went on, and I never could take a gym class. I could never go outside in the summer. I would lay on my bed and read Nancy Drew books.
Ooh,
because
I love Nancy Drew.
Isn't it great?
Yeah, I just read one actually a week ago.
No.
Yeah.
I remember the one about the clock. There was something about the clock. It was just an amazing, and the staircase, the hidden staircase, those were my, oh my gosh. So I just would lay on the bed, and I couldn't exert any energy. I would have these asthma attacks, and so it wasn't a very pleasant childhood, but oh well, you get through it. Still eating junk all the time, drinking sodas. We would come home from school, and my dad had a lot of penny candy, so there were bowls of penny candy. We would eat this candy.
Were your parents ever sick?
The whole family was sick. Okay. I mean, everyone was sick. It was really something. And And then several of my family members were obese, and I tended to go the other way and couldn't keep the weight on, which was interesting. But what came to be is, as a young adult, I was about 25 years old, and and this is a true story, I was at my husband's company picnic, and I was crying at Camp Dearborn. I was hiding like under a tree crying because I was always so sick. I would have strep throat in the middle of the summer, and then the next month I would have a vaginal, yeast issue, and then I would have more of the hives and more of this, and I never knew what was wrong with me. Still eating the junk food diet, right? And now I'm an adult, I'm drinking beer and drinking wine and that kind of a thing. I was at this company picnic, and I literally was crying under a tree, and a woman came up to me and, what are you crying, blah, blah, blah. Probably a spouse of one of the other employees. And I just told her my sad story. And she said, you should go see this doctor. He'll look in your eyes, he'll give you weeds and seeds, and you'll get better.
Weeds and seeds.
Weeds and seeds. And I thought, okay, this is the 70s. There's a lot of weeds. There's a lot of seeds and buttons and things. I don't know about this. So I thanked her very much. I put the piece of paper in my pocket and, whatever. Thank you. Well, that next week, middle of July, I've got strep throat again. I was always sick, and thank goodness I was a good employee, because I really pushed the limit. Back then, I was just working at a bank subsidiary in Bloomfield Hills. It was Michigan National Leasing Corporation, a small subsidiary of Michigan National Bank at the time, and I had worked there for 7 years, and I was an excellent employee, but I was always sick, and they kept me around for whatever reason. There weren't laws back then to protect the sick, but I was ill, and I was doing the laundry. It was summertime, hanging it on the line, and that piece of paper came out of the pocket.
Oh my gosh.
It had been through the wash.
Wow.
And right? And I was upset, and I was just kind of having a conversation, with the powers that be. I'm just so tired of this. What is going on? Why me? The whole story. That little paper fell out of the pocket, and I opened it up and looked at it, and it was what that woman had written down. And I said, all right, if this is a sign, I'm going to go in, right? If this is it, I'm going to go in the house, I'm going to call that number, and they're going to see me today, because I'm going to tell you how to do your job. And went in and called, and she said, oh, I'm so sorry. He's booked for 3 weeks. I'll put you on the cancellation list.
What kind of doctor was he? Was he an iridologist?
He was an iridologist, but he was also a naturopathic doctor trained in Germany.
Oh, wow.
So this was early 70s, but he had spent quite a long time in Germany learning herbal medicine and fasting and colon health, which was, now it's big news since the 90s. Now Western medicine is into all of this, bowel health. But of course, that wasn't the deal. I was supposed to get in that day if this was the sign, right? About 2 hours later, the woman called and said, we've had a cancellation, and if you can come in at this time, he will see you.
So that's sign number 2.
That's right. I got in my little van, my little hippie van, and I drove all the way from West Bloomfield all the way to Sterling Heights, I think it was, and saw this man, and I walked into it could not have been bigger than this space. There was a desk and 2 chairs, and I walked in, and he had a mustache that went like this, and I thought, oh no. What have I done? But I went in there, and he just started talking to me and figuring things out and telling me, what is your diet like? First question. And I tell him what I eat. You could see his eyes get big, and he says, well, I'm going to tell you what we're going to do. We're going to take out all the white flour, all the white sugar. I'm going to take out, dairy. I'm going to take out all of these things, and we're going to find out what you're reacting to. And you're going to take these herbs. And one of them, or you're going to do these teas. And he said, one of them is horsetail. And I thought to myself, oh my goodness, I've been horseback riding. I see what comes out of that behind. I'm not sure I want to make a tea and drink it every day about a horse's tail. I didn't know it was a plant. I knew nothing about plant medicine. So after you saw him, you would go to his house, and his wife had all of these herbs in her house in alcohol bottles. She was making her homemade tinctures, and she would give you these tinctures and send you on your way. And he told me, if you give me 1 year, I can completely heal your body and get you off these medications. And it didn't take that long. It took 9 months.
Wow.
9 months of adhering to his diet, being very faithful to the herbal medicine, and the skin came back. You know, I'm never sick, truly. I'm healthier now than when I was 20 years old, and I'm 66. So it was exciting.
Wow.
And so, and then I was just like, oh my goodness, this man knows everything. But we became friends, and he could see my passion and my excitement over this, how to heal the body, you know. And so he introduced me to Dr. Bernard Jensen, and then he introduced me to Dr. John Christopher, who were true healers at that time. And, you know, we didn't have internet, there were very few books.
Yeah.
So these men would come to Bassett's Health Food Store down in Toledo, Ohio, and they would rent a school auditorium. And these speakers would come in, no PowerPoint presentations, right? It's the 70s, late 70s, and we would have these 3-day intensives.
And you're lucky if you got a mimeograph piece of paper, right?
And you didn't.
Yeah.
It was all the notes you took.
Yeah.
And so Dr. Jensen would get on stage and he'd talk for 3 days, and then we'd have another kind of a session, and Dr. John Christopher. Christopher was a really interesting fellow. He was a very famous herbalist out west, and by 1945, Utah and Wyoming area, he had been working with the Native American medicine men for years, and they called him the white medicine man because he had a working knowledge of herbal medicine too, studying at a college in somewhere in Canada. The Herbal Dominion College, thank you, I just got that. The Herbal Dominion College up in Canada. So by 1945, he had created 50 herbal combinations where there were multiple herbs in a combination, like let's say for infertility or heart disease. And these are still in use today, and they are world-renowned formulas.
Wow.
Yes, Dr. John Christopher. So his work is still, you know, his combinations and his history is still being shared with a lot of healers. So I just started there and just really became interested. By 1983, I opened a practice in Heartland, Michigan.
Oh, wow.
And most of my clients were farmers because they didn't like medicine, right? So I was attracting farmers from this area. And back then, M59 was just a 2-lane road. I mean, it wasn't the huge, you know, it was just a tiny, you know, little road. And I was on M59 and in Heartland. And then I moved to Brighton for just a year or two. And then I said, you know, I belong in Ann Arbor. This is Ann Arbor. So I worked out of my home for a couple of years, and then a holistic medical doctor, Dr. Lev Linkner, asked me if I would move my practice to his building, and I've been there ever since.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, for 27 years I've been with Dr. Linkner. So.
Oh, okay. And he's the person that is in the dedication?
That I dedicate, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I was wondering if that was one of the original guys that you met.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Oh, wow. Now, you have some other background, like you're a board-certified nutritionist. What exactly does that mean?
Well,
and how has that helped you in what you're doing?
Right.
Because, you know, that it kind of, nutritionist, you kind of think more conventional medicine.
Well,
and then
that's exactly right. So I have a master's in a Master of Science in Human Nutrition. Most people go from that, they become a registered dietitian.
I see.
I had no interest in being a dietitian. I did not want to just work
with... What's the difference between dietitian and nutritionist?
Yeah, dietitians are, you know, you have kidney disease, this is your issue, you know, this is what you eat. They develop programs for people that have disease states, pretty much, you know, and they're, you know, recognized by insurance companies, and they're, you know, you can, if you're in the hospital, the dietitian will come and, you know, prepare a program for you. Whereas with nutrition, it's far different. First of all, it's not recognized with insurance companies. at all. But yeah.
Forbid it's nutrition.
Yes,
right?
because my goodness, it's just what you're eating. Why would that be important?
Right.
But what and so the next step then for most people, and even chiropractors have gotten a CNS designation, medical doctors get a CNS. So it's kind of the next step if you're not a dietitian. So it's just being through that board being certified, and you have to have so many years of experience, and you have to pass a really lengthy exam. So yeah, that's what that's all about.
But it doesn't get you any insurance coverage.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah,
it just gives you the recognition that I passed these qualifications and I kind of know what I'm talking about.
So you knew, like, once you were healed and everything, like, you wanted to help other people be
That
healed.
was it. That was, and I was still, I was a young mother now, so it's 1979, 1980, I'm a young mother in this neighborhood, and they all knew me before when I was sick. And so, you know, the women in the neighborhood, we were all young moms together, they would come and sit on the front lawn. This was way before we had monitors. These women their babies are taking a nap. They would wander down, sit on the front lawn, and then every once in a while they'd wander back. You know, is the baby crying?
Yeah, people didn't worry, and everybody seemed to be okay. I don't
was
know how it
okay.
was.
I don't know how it was either.
How
but,
do people even? Yeah.
and they would say, "Do me, do me." You know, they would give me their list of concerns, and then I would spend numerous hours trying to figure out what they should do. But we would have these little powwows on my front lawn. So,
Oh my gosh.
and then I knew I had to get into this, and I taught at the Walled Lake Community Rec and Ed at night. I would teach classes on everything I was learning, and back then, you know, it was a big topic, and I could have 40 or 50 people in a classroom, you know, listening and teaching people how to home can and how to, you know, preserve foods, and you know, we built the little, you know, cellar down underneath the home in the crawl space and put all the food. It was crazy. It was fun times. It was fun times.
Now you also you're also teaching at Eastern University functional and integrative medicine. Can you speak
What does
more?
that mean? Yeah.
Some of it I know because I've been to an integrative. I've been to somebody who did integrative medicine. But what can you explain exactly what that is and how you got involved with Eastern?
Yes. So it started out in the 70s. It was called alternative medicine. Alternatives, meaning you either did it this way with herbs or you did the Western. It was an alternative to that, and then it became complementary. When in the early 90s, Western medicine started noticing that people were willing to pay out of pocket for services. You know, we better investigate this. We better start doing research on these things.
I didn't realize that transition from alternative to complementary. That's funny.
Isn't it?
I did not realize what that meant.
Yeah. So then it became complementary. Western medicine said, okay, you know, you're not just a bunch of crazy hippies. You do have some valid information here, so we'll call that a complement to our practice. So now it's complementary. And there were also the terms holistic, you know, medicine, all these different names came about. Well, after they did the research, so complementary meant we'll acknowledge you're doing it. We don't know much about it, but it's a complement to our therapy, which is the real one. Now, with all the science that came, now they realize truly what we were teaching in the 70s and early 80s is incredibly functional. It is functional medicine. It's looking at the person as a whole and not in just pieces.
Right.
So not just looking at you know, your immune system, but looking at your entire body and looking at your gut and how it relates to the immune system. So then it became integrative. Now they've integrated what we were doing 30 years ago into medicine, and that's where the name functional and integrative comes in. Crazy, isn't it? I had a reputation in Ann Arbor. I've been there for a long time. So Eastern Michigan approached me and asked me if I would teach a course because they saw that hole in their curriculum.
Where does this class fit in? Which program is this in the nurse? Is this in nursing?
It can be. It's an elective course.
Okay.
We have dietitians, nutritionists, nurses, anyone in the health sciences or health promotion. They're all, you know, welcome to take it as an elective.
So do you teach this yearly?
I teach it in the winter. It's the winter course.
Winter course? Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, good for them for reaching out to do that.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
They have to know this, Tara, because patients are coming in and they're taking a plethora of supplementation. And if these practitioners are not aware of how these supplements can interact with medication, sometimes negate the medication altogether. This is something that really everyone in health should be trained in. I don't think it should be an elective. I really believe that everyone should understand this. And there are wonderful databases and tools that people can learn. And so when their person comes, because you see back then, nobody wanted to tell the doctor they were taking herbs because they knew that they would be chastised.
Right.
You have expensive urine was the classic line that they would say. Well, now people come in and bring this information, but the clinicians aren't aware of they're still not aware of how it works or how it's going to interact. So I feel like it's really important for people that are in the health practices to understand that.
Yeah, and I know we're going to talk in the second interview that we do about your book, but I do want to mention your book. It's called Your Body's Environmental Chemical Burden. And if you could just briefly explain what this book is about, and then we'll break it down a little bit later,
Okay.
and why you wrote it. But can you just explain this brand new book that just came out?
Thank you. It is a book about how the chemicals that are in our environment are affecting our bodies on a daily basis. Some of them are stored in our tissue, some of them we're able to eliminate more easily, but it's really a guide to help educate people on how to avoid the chemicals as much as possible, the ones we do have control over. And believe me, we don't have control over a lot of those chemicals, but we do have control over some of them. So it's a resource guide. So especially, my target audience are millennials. And the reason for that is that the millennial generation and the Generation Zs that are coming in are the most highly toxic children and young adults ever in the history of this planet, because these chemicals are persistent in our environment, and the female is passing them on to the unborn. And it's really, my goal is to get in front of millennial groups. The Gen Zs are a little bit young right now, but the millennials between 24 and 38, that is my target audience to really educate.
Is it Gen Y that's right, older than millennials?
Yes.
Because I have a friend in that framework, and many of his peers have been dying of cancer. They're like I can't believe it, in their 30s, dying of cancer.
I know.
And it's more than just a couple.
Yeah.
It's shocking to me, and there's obviously something else going on. Yeah, so that's really, really fascinating. I'm not really sure where I am on time right now, but this book, when it was published in 2019, 2018?
It came out in November of 2018.
In 2018, okay. Because right now you're doing some lecturing and travel around that. Can you talk just real briefly about that?
We just had a big event in Ann Arbor about a week and a half ago for the official book launch, because that is my hometown. So we did the official book launch there. But I will be traveling around and doing presentations around the country. We haven't set anything up yet, but definitely. I know I will be in Las Vegas in September. That's all I know at this point.
That'll be fun.
Yeah, but I'll be in Las Vegas in September.
Yeah, so my very last question I'd like to ask you is if you could give one piece of advice about health in just a minute or so, what would that piece of advice be?
The best advice, and there are two things. Movement. People hate the word exercise. Movement. Move the body. Dr. Bernard Jensen used to say, nutrition without exercise is nothing. That movement, we're machines, we need to move. That, number one. And number two is eating rainbow-colored foods, and not Skittles, but rainbow-colored produce. Those are the two most important things.
Oh, wow. Those are, that's great advice. I want to thank you so much, Cindy Clement, author of Your Body's Environmental Chemical Burden, and we'll be following up again with another interesting interview with you.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. If you'd like more information about our program, please visit us at www.michiganentrepreneurtv.com. Please join us again in the future when I interview another enterprising entrepreneur. Until then, wishing you the best of business.